about this story. The Silence Protocol is a work of fiction generated in collaboration with AI. The narrative, characters, and events are entirely imaginary and do not depict real people, institutions, or situations. Any resemblance is purely coincidental or symbolically thematic. It explores speculative science, dystopian control systems, and ethical dilemmas through a thriller format. This story was conceptualized and developed through a creative dialogue between the author and Microsoft Copilot, an AI designed to support storytelling and creative writing. The chapters and story arcs blend human imagination with artificial intelligence-generated prose, allowing for real-time plot development, character evolution, and stylistic experimentation. Where the ideas came from. Microscope science meets suspicion, inspired by real-world debates around genetics, data privacy, and public health policy. The fictional virus and vaccine program were designed to reflect larger questions about control and misinformation. Television media influence and propaganda. Jonas Creed represents the weaponization of charisma and media power, echoing historic and modern instances of disinformation campaigns. Brain AI and ethical design. The concept of the Silence Protocol taps into concerns about how algorithms shape belief, behavior, and truth, drawing from both cybersecurity language and philosophical inquiry. Detective thriller tropes with a twist. Hidden labs, encrypted messages, rogue agents, and underground resistance movements are nods to classic conspiracy thrillers, but reframed through a post-digital lens. This project invites readers to explore the tension between truth and silence, data and narrative, and fear and freedom, crafted with imagination and enhanced by AI collaboration. Chapter 1. The Silence Protocol. They told us the truth would set us free. But in the end, it was silence that kept the world spinning. I remember the first time I saw the genome. It was late, 2:47 a.m. to be exact. The lab was quiet, save for the hum of the sequencer and the occasional flicker of the overhead lights. I wasn't supposed to be there. The data wasn't supposed to exist. But there it was, anomalies in the spike protein that didn't match any known evolutionary pathway. It was like finding a fingerprint in a snowstorm. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, knowing what it meant. This wasn't just a virus. It was a message, a signature. Someone had built this. The world outside was already unraveling. Cities locked down, flights grounded, people hoarding toilet paper like it was currency. But the real contagion wasn't the virus, it was the fear. And fear, I've learned, is the most efficient delivery system for control. That's when the broadcast started. A man named Jonas Creed, once a senator, now a self-styled prophet, began flooding the net with sermons disguised as science. He told people the virus was a hoax, that the cure was worse than the disease. He had charisma, conviction, and a billion-dollar media machine behind him. People listened. They always do when the truth is inconvenient. And then there was the vaccine. Rushed. Flawed. Weaponized by incompetence and greed. The rollout was chaos. Some doses worked. Others didn't. A few did something else entirely. I tried to speak up. I wrote reports. I sent encrypted messages. I even met with a journalist in a parking garage like some Cold War cliché. But every time I got close, the silence closed in. Files disappeared. Colleagues vanished. My name was quietly removed from the research credits. Now I'm on the run. Not from the virus, but from the people who profited from it. The ones who built it, spread it, and silenced anyone who got too close. They call it the Silence Protocol. I call it treason. And I'm going to break it. Chapter 2. Beneath the Static. They say paranoia is just heightened awareness. If that's true, I've been wide awake for years. The burner phone buzzed against my chest at 3:12 a.m. same hour, different day. There was no caller ID. Only a single word. Echo. I hadn't heard that name in years. Not since the data dump in Marrakesh. Not since we burned the server farm and walked out with nothing but ash and encrypted regrets. I knew what echo meant. Someone was calling in a favor. Or issuing a warning. I packed in less than a minute. Hard drives, aliases, half a protein bar. The city was asleep, but the cameras weren't. Every traffic light, every storefront window, watching, logging, learning. Creed's eyes were everywhere now. Not his personally, of course. He didn't need to watch when algorithms could do the shaming for him. My exit route was an old tunnel beneath the pharmacy on 9th. During the outbreak, it had been used to move oxygen tanks and black market antibiotics. Now it was just shadows and stale air. I climbed down, past graffiti that whispered truths in code. MK Elysium lives. Q3 is awake. Silence is violence. Halfway through, I heard footsteps.
Slow.
Deliberate. Not a guard, too quiet. Not a rat, too tall. She stepped into the dim light wearing a carbon fiber vest and suspicion. "You're late," she said. "And you're real," I replied. She didn't smile. That was good. I'd stopped trusting people who smiled too easily. Her name was Lyra. Ex-military. Ex-scientist. Current fugitive. She had the same look I saw in the mirror most mornings, tight eyes and loose trust. She slid a dossier across the rusted table. Inside were names, dosages, timelines. Evidence. "Creed's not just rewriting the narrative," she said. "He's rewriting history." The vaccine failures weren't accidents. They were trials. Genomic experiments folded into humanitarian aid.
We were the lab rats.
And the control group? They were already underground. I felt the weight of it then, not just the lies, but the cost of truth. It doesn't come cheap. It bleeds. It disappears. It forgets your name and leaves you with numbers. But I didn't run. Not this time. "The silence ends now," I whispered. And Lyra nodded, like she'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. Chapter 3. The Algorithm of Faith. I used to believe data couldn't lie. Turns out it just needs the right narrative to kneel. We reached the sanctuary around 5 a.m., not a church, but it used to be one. Pews stripped for kindling. Stained glass painted over in blackout tones. The altar? Replaced by a solar array feeding encrypted terminals. In here, belief wasn't in saints or salvation. It was in code. Lyra led me past the congregants, engineers, medics, former intelligence analysts, all burned by the system, now building something beneath it. They called themselves the Archive. Their creed was truth, but truth had prerequisites: trust, bandwidth, and time. "Creed's pushing V6 live in 5 days, she told me. "It won't just be a booster. It'll rewrite baseline genetics. Permanently." She handed me a schematic, delivery systems camouflaged as public health campaigns. Mobile injection units with AI-driven consent bots. No opt-outs. No appeal. Just immunity with strings. I stared at the blueprint until my fingers trembled. "This is genocide with a disclaimer," I muttered. "No," Lyra said. "It's ideology encoded as biology." We needed more. Proof, broadcast channels, a leak that couldn't be scrubbed. That's when I heard his voice again. Jonas Creed. He was hosting a virtual town hall. Smiling.
Calm.
The kind of calm only sociopaths and salesmen could master. Behind him, the emblems of his false republic, the data graphs that made fear look like foresight. "I ask only for obedience," he said.
For unity.
For silence. But something was off. In the corner of the screen, I saw her, Dr. Mayfield. Missing for 7 months. She wasn't nodding. She was blinking. Morse code. "I'm alive." I recorded the feed. Slowed it frame by frame. She blinked again. This time, a string. Asterisk, "Creed lives through faith. Break the algorithm." Asterisk. It wasn't just a warning. It was a map. And I intended to follow it. Because if silence was a system, then truth could be a virus. Chapter 4. A name in the code. There's a moment, right before exposure, where truth and annihilation share the same silhouette. I'd learned to stop blinking when it came. Lyra and I worked through the night. The archive had scrubbed over a terabyte of intercepted traffic, but buried in a corrupted firmware update was a string of metadata. One that shouldn't have been there.
A name.
Not Jonas Creed.
Mine.
I froze. It was embedded in the vaccine's proprietary code, tucked inside a checksum string formatted like a date. The timestamp was from the night I saw the genome. Somehow, Somewhere, I hadn't just glimpsed the truth. I'd become part of it. Your research was grafted, Lyra said quietly. It wasn't stolen. It was used. She wasn't wrong. The anomaly I documented, the synthetic spike, it had been replicated, refined, branded. My fingerprints were laced through it like a hidden signature. You're the ghost in the machine, she added. And Creed's system is haunted. There wasn't time for guilt. Not when the algorithm's next patch was scheduled to deploy in less than 72 hours. The archive's plan was bold. Intercept the satellite uplink at one of Creed's drone hubs and broadcast a reversal payload, a looped corruption that would brick the whole network. But it needed a key. And that key was encrypted inside my own voiceprint. A file I hadn't heard in years. Experiment Echo_472, wave. I played it. Static at first. Then, this is Dr. A, no aliases. This is my confession. My voice.
Cracked. Bare. Buried.
It was never meant to spread. It wasn't a broadcast. It was a seed. We would plant it, because the silence may be viral, but so is regret. And sometimes, if you say it loud enough, redemption echoes louder than betrayal. Chapter 5. The Uplink. The drone hub sat beneath a burned-out shopping mall. Ironic, considering Creed had once called consumerism the virus behind the virus. The escalators were twisted metal. Storefronts stripped bare. The only sign of life was a glowing terminal humming behind a bulletproof kiosk once labeled customer service. We weren't here to shop. Lyra mapped the signal triangulation while I spliced together the payload. My confession, my voiceprint, and the algorithmic decay that would loop Creed's updates until his system ate itself alive. Once we're in, she said, we have 13 minutes before the uplink rotates to a secured relay. After that. There is no after, I finished. The descent into the sublevel was breathless. Heat signature scanners swept the concrete. Facial recognition grid lines blinked red as they scraped our interference masks. We reached the control module, a pedestal of glass and steel surrounded by drone docks glowing blue, like a digital altar. I uploaded the package, initializing Echo Protocol. Then the screen glitched. A face appeared. Not Creed. Not Lyra.
Mine.
They see you, she whispered. I know, I said. They were always meant to. That's when the drones activated. A dozen eyes blinked open. They didn't attack. They listened. My voice spilled through the speaker array, warped through codecs, sharpened by conviction. This is not a broadcast, it said. This is a reckoning. The software loop began its work, scrambling timestamps, corrupting update queues, rewriting firmware in reverse. One by one, the drones powered down. Not defeated. Unsubscribed. Creed's voice tried to override. Static. Chopped syllables. Too late. I turned to Lyra. Her face was lit by 1,000 pixels of rebellion. They'll come for us, she said. Let them, I replied. We've already gone viral.